Siyo, I'm Johnny Jack Kidwell, your at-large tribal council member. On Saturday, June the 8th, I had the pleasure of attending the christening of the United States naval ship Cherokee Nation. She's the second of 10 new towing, salvage, and rescue ships built by Bollinger Shipyard in Louisiana. This class of ship is 263 feet long and will perform salvage, rescue, humanitarian, and other surveillance operations at sea. What an amazing ship with so many important missions. My council colleague and friend Victoria Vasquez is the ship's sponsor, and she did an outstanding job. I know she will serve the ship's future command and crew with distinction. Cherokee Nation Principal Chief Chuck Hoskin Jr. was also there, and he delivered a keynote address for the 100 plus attendees, which included several admirals, generals, and other high-level military and civilian personnel. Let me tell you, as a 20-year veteran of the U.S. Coast Guard and a member of the Tribal Council, I thought Chief's remarks were powerful and inspiring. And frankly, I thought you might want to watch those remarks yourself. So as always, please like this video and hit subscribe so that you don't miss any future updates. I hope this channel at least helps you and other at-large citizens feel a little bit more connected to the Cherokee Nation. What up?
This microphone down to an average height. Ladies and gentlemen, it is an honor and a privilege to be with you today. This is a city, Houma, Louisiana, that now holds a special place in my heart. This is a place that my wife and I, our First Lady, visited years ago when the keel was laid. That was a special kind of ceremony. This is a special kind of gathering. Houma reminds me of things that are special. This is a special kind of Navy ship. And this is a special kind of heat. You've got to understand our people have not adapted to this heat. But if you keep inviting us back to Houma, then we'll get used to it, because we love this city and we love this place and we love what we're here to celebrate. I'm particularly appreciative of the Cherokee Nation representatives who could be here today, members of our council. I know they've been introduced, a member of my cabinet, our chief of staff, the staff that's here sharing this with us, and many people watching back home. Everyone is excited about this event. I mentioned our First Lady, January. One of the first visits that we made together after the first term of office started was here. And that set an incredible tone for what was to come, because it reminded us about Cherokee Nation's place and its prominent place in this country, and the short time that she and I have to serve, how important that is. It's also particularly special to me that my two favorite, well, let's say three favorite veterans, my father, Chuck Hoskin, who served in the Navy. By the way, he began his service in the Navy 54 years ago this week. We appreciate that. Our Secretary of Veterans Affairs, I always love to share a stage with him, and I'm appreciative that he is here. And Councilman Johnny Jack Kidwell, who's very special in terms of his service to the country, and he's special to my family. And I just am glad to share the stage with veterans. That's particularly important to me. The heat, though, is not what is most on my mind today. What's most on my mind today is what this ship means to the Cherokee people and to the chief of the Cherokee Nation. And I think what it stands for, in terms of its inextricable link to the Cherokee people from this day forward, as long as she sails, is resilience, and its service, and its friendship. Now, in terms of resilience, I think it's remarkable, not for me personally to be on this stage, but for any chief of the Cherokee Nation to be on this stage in 2024, if you know a little something about our history. There were times in the history of the last 500 years since European contact when some folks counted us out and some folks were planning for us to be counted out. There were times when we were up against the wall, and it didn't look like we had much of a future. But the Cherokee people are tough, and we are resilient. And throughout that period of time, including since the founding of this country, when there was a great many dark and difficult chapters, including our forced removal, along what's known today as the Trail of Tears, there were times when anyone would have had their doubt that a Cherokee Nation would exist in 2024 as anything more than a footnote in history. But we are every day, and certainly today, not a footnote in history. We're making history. And that's part of the resilience of the Cherokee people. And that's why we're still here. And so anytime I get to take the stage in an event like this, I'm reminded of how incredibly against the odds it is that a Cherokee Nation is here, that we are a sovereign nation, able to exercise our democracy, by the way, one of the oldest democracies on the planet, and that we get to celebrate such an occasion. It's because of the resilience of our ancestors. And that resilience, I assure you, is still in place today. And that's why I can tell you we're doing some incredible things with the Cherokee Nation. But it's all born of that sense that we belong, that we've got the audacity to exist, particularly when times are tough. We just got tougher. And here we are. So resilience is what's on my mind today as I think about an event like this. The other thing I think about is service. It's been mentioned. But Cherokee people and the Cherokee Nation as an ally have served with this country and for this country. In every conflict or war since the United States Civil War, consistently the Cherokee Nation has been there. Whether it was to preserve the Union or whether it was decades later in World War I. Now think about this. In the Civil War, the soldiers who were Cherokee, within their living memory was the forced removal that I mentioned to you before, the Trail of Tears. And yet they served. In World War I, within the living memory of those soldiers who signed up for the different branches of service of the United States military, within their living memory was the near destruction of that great democracy I mentioned to you before, that sovereign nation that I mentioned to you before, at the hands of the United States, and the imposition of a new state upon our lands and the allotment of our lands. Within their living memory was that chapter in history, and yet they served. And throughout the rest of time till today, Cherokee people have served men like Johnny Jack Kidwell, men like my father, men like Secretary of Veterans Affairs S. Joe Christening, and so many more, actually in disproportionate numbers to our population, which is true across Native peoples in this country. All of that has always struck me as incredible and powerful, that Cherokee people were moved to serve, even though there were those dark chapters. I think part of the reason is because the principles on which this country was founded and what she represents on her best day and what she achieves on her greatest days is something that's universal across humanity, and it's certainly something the Cherokee people believe in. Freedom, the ability to exercise our liberties, the ability to dream and achieve those dreams as individuals, the ability to have a free government like the democracy that is the Cherokee Nation. We believed in that, and our people were willing to fight and die, and many did. So service is on my mind as I think about this ship. And finally, friendship is on my mind. Because even though there have been dark chapters in the story of the United States and the Cherokee Nation, the history of those two nations, and even though that history ought to be talked about, and I've mentioned some of it, and there's a great deal more we ought to talk about in this country, and we ought to remember, even though there are those dark chapters, and make no mistake, there is a friendship. The United States is the oldest partner that the Cherokee Nation has. We have a government-to-government relationship that dates back to the founding of this country, through treaties, through other agreements. We've got a relationship that has stood the test of time. And yes, there's been some dark and difficult chapters, but today, in this century, the story is one of friendship, of working together, of what we can achieve as Americans together, and what we as Cherokee people can contribute to this country. And I think we can contribute a great deal. And so when I think of this ship for the rest of my life, and when I think of what this ship is doing in defense of this country, and I think of the name that she bears, and I think of this event with all of you, I think that this ship stands for now and will always stand for, in the minds of the Cherokee people, certainly in the mind of this Cherokee, resilience, service, and friendship. And I've been glad just to bear witness to a little part of it. Thank you all very much. Whatever.